Who is that?
You were not content with the stories, so I was obliged to come. Helen, you came to me. Surrender to me now, and he shall be unharmed.
You heard it up top. We are heading to Chicago for a sweet, sweet treat because we are about to hang out with the. Ooh, don't say it. Don't say his name, but we have to. It's Candyman here on Normies Like Us with your hosts, Cabrini Colin.
Oh, I like that. I'll be Anne-Marie Mike Coy. Where is my baby?
Oh.
Wow. And this is, I guess this is Jacob Lyle trying to get to the bottom of this. Yeah.
There we go.
Wow.
There we go.
The Cobby Man. The Cobby Man.
Cobby Man.
Oh.
Too easy.
Don't say the Cobby
Mike's
Man.
so specific. I absolutely loved that. Great choice.
Well, in our Star Trek, I like to go with a McCoy every once in a while. So I saw it right there. I had to do it. I still don't know where my baby is, though, or my dog. So.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Wow.
But we're talking Candyman. Don't want to say his name too many times. I'm afraid he might appear behind me. But...
Let's put a limit.
Yeah, does this lens reflect enough for the video record to count? We'll be careful. But so yeah, we're stepping through. It's yet another, Spooktober. We've done
that's right.
The Exorcist. We've done Friday the 13th. So 70s, 80s, and now we're marching into the 90s with an early 90s, 1992 classic.
Chronological order.
Planned it out that way.
Yeah, Exorcist was Colin's choice. Friday the 13th, kind of everyone's choice, right? That was a group one.
We had a Friday the 13th this month, so it's like let's do
right.
it.
It was God's choice.
Yeah.
We'll get to Mike's choice next week, I believe. But this week it's my choice, and we're talking the 1992 film classic Candyman. I just said it again. We're gonna have to keep track.
Keep a running tab.
Yeah.
Just to give my history, last Spooktacular, I think I mentioned that I watched the 2021 kind of Candyman. Not even a reboot. It's technically a sequel, right? But I had never seen the original. Yeah. So then we went into this. I had never seen this. Again, all these have been kind of weird blind spots for me. The Exorcist, Friday the 13th, I hadn't seen in a long time. And this I'd never seen.
Love these first impressions, Mike.
Yeah, it was cool to watch this, and I rolled right into the sequel just to see how it felt with context, and I'll talk about that at the end. But yeah, first time with this 90s classic. Get to see Ted Raimi and some others. Tony Todd's doing it. So yeah, I enjoyed it, and we'll get into that deeper.
Absolutely.
I'll give my history real quick, and then let the episode runner himself take over. But
the Queen Bee.
Wow.
The Queen Bee. Oh no. You know what?
Bees in my mouth.
This isn't my franchise. I'm not really scared of bees. I'm definitely not somebody. I don't know about you guys. Did you ever do like Bloody Mary or something like that? Something where you would have to say a ghoul's name multiple times. Did you guys ever do that?
Not really, but of course I knew about Bloody Mary.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had the Bloody
Mary. I
Mary.
don't know, like at a sleepover or something. I don't know. So Candyman, I was hold on. I was never really worried about it. And I don't know. I never really saw it till college. I think former host of this podcast, Joe, probably showed it to me at a party and kind of explained its cool cultural significance. And since then, obviously, I've been a fan and think it's a cool franchise. And Mike, like yourself, I watched not only a film called Candyman, but also a film called Candyman.
We are way.
Oh my God, we are. Yeah. He is showing up.
It is weird though. I do actually not want to say it after watching these.
Yes.
I think I'm a normal.
Let's just call it the movie, right?
The movie. What do you think of the movie?
It's like when you stand in the mirror, you're not going to just start saying Bloody Mary, even if you know that she's not going to appear. Like just to be safe, like you don't want to say it.
You don't you don't mess around with those.
Psychological.
Yeah,
that's right.
And the 5 times is a big commitment, but we'll get into it. Jacob.
Yeah.
What's your history?
Yeah.
For me, the reason I chose this movie, I watched this last year during my 31 days of Spooktober movie watching. And we did a little series called Hellraiser last year. By a young man named Clive Barker. Well, this is kind of Clive Barker's other big contribution to to the horror canon, if you will, because this is based on a short story by him, and it kind of it became a horror classic, and I think a little bit underappreciated when you're talking your Freddys, your Jasons, your Michael Myers. Like people tend to forget about old Candyman, but
and
I think
well,
this movie,
I was just gonna say, as far as horror villains go, best dressed has got to go to Candyman. Are you kidding me? This
guy
is
he's the
stylish
swaggiest.
Candyman does
man.
have drip. That is true.
Yeah, big drip. Yeah,
and I'm a huge Tony Todd fan. Obviously, we've talked about him in our Star Trek episodes. He's kind of a Jeffrey Combs like guy, where he's played at least 3 different roles that I know of in Star Trek, including Kern, Worf's brother, as well as he played old Jake Sisko in an episode, a great episode of DS9 that Colin, you like a lot as well.
A lot.
So the McCoy connection and the Tony Todd connection. It's all about Star Trek here, us.
That's right. But Tony Todd, cool guy, great, iconic voice, and this movie, I think it deserves a little more praise. So
what I appreciate about it, Jacob, and especially after your Clive Barker run, which was so cool last year, where you were explaining not only the film we covered, I didn't go as deep as you did, but you even expanded out to this other stuff. It shows range, because this is not a dark, twisted sexual nightmare. There is like none of that in this. Instead, it is like a very thoughtful and sort of like introspective look at like trauma and how it lasts. That's right. Crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of all about the generational racial trauma of this country that we live in, America. And of course, who better to talk about that than 3 white guys, right?
Yeah.
Well, again, written by a gay white guy, but it's an interesting topic for a guy to cover, and I feel comfortable talking about it, because look, this is an awesome movie, and people deserve to know about it. Right?
That's right. Yeah, I just want to say, obviously we're not experts or anything, but we'll try to talk about it in the best way that we can, and maybe there's other voices that can be heard as well, but we'll do our best.
We'll do our best from what our perspective can be, right? Yeah,
that's right.
And it's an important the themes I think are important. So I like this movie a lot. But that being said, though, should we just jump right into it?
Let's do it. I got.
Well, are either of you guys allergic to bees?
No.
So,
me neither.
That's good.
Love bees. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll be right back after this.
Be right back. We're back here on Normies Like Us, where we hope we've hooked you, because we're talking Candyman. That's right. Give us a little rundown in history on this cool horror cult classic.
Absolutely. So, of course, like I mentioned before, based on a Clive Barker short story called The Forbidden, part of an anthology of Clive Barker short stories, I believe, called The Book of Blood, which is great. Yes. And Clive Barker, like you said, an Englishman, a gay Englishman, who wrote this about class in English society in London. This was originally about English people, I guess. But the director, Bernard Rose, was interested in adapting it. He met with Clive Barker and decided to adapt it to, be about Chicago's Cabrini Green projects, and sort of about the racial and, class differences in America. So,
Bernard Rose, that is the coolest idea on the planet. Good work, dude.
Yeah. I think, obviously America has its own very troubled history. England has their historical problems as well, but it's perfect, a perfect adaptation to put it in, set in America. So,
well, and especially Chicago, like to connect to some other horror stuff that we really liked. Lovecraft Country is also set in Chicago, so that there's a lot of history there. Not an expert, asterisk, but
right.
It seems to be a fitting setting based on some unfortunate histories with
Is Get Out Chicago? I wonder if it is. Maybe it's New York.
That's a good question.
Look that up by the end of the episode.
Yeah. And of course, the Jordan Peele connection here, of course, is that just in 2 years ago, 2021, they did make a direct sequel to this. So of course there was 2 sequels to this movie made in the 90s, lesser known, but they took the Halloween route of saying this sequel is a direct sequel from the first one. And that was directed by Nia DaCosta, co-written by her and Jordan Peele. Nia DaCosta, of course, is now directing the Marvels, new MCU movie coming out.
Cool.
And did you know she's the youngest director to ever helm an MCU project?
Oh,
at
is that
age
true?
33. She's our age.
Wow,
Yeah.
cool,
Wow.
super cool. And obviously that stars Teyana Paris as well, who is in
who's in
Candyman.
in the sequel,
Wow, look
and
at
as
that.
well as Yahya Abdul-Mateen, an actor I like a lot. But the original 1992, Bernard Rose, not a director I'm super familiar with. And if you look at his filmography, this is kind of maybe his best known film. Didn't do a lot of note after this, I would say, at least from my perspective. But had this great idea to make this movie, and it's all about kind of urban legends, right? Myth making of America, and how that ties in to everything. So there's a lot of cool ideas here, a lot of cool themes and stuff to think about. So it's not just a horror movie that will scare you, but also make you think potentially. So
yeah, that's what surprised me, because I had not seen the original. I watched the other one, and without the context of the original, it didn't really stick with me. But after watching the original now, like I've been just thinking about it ever since I finished watching, like the themes and like what does this scene represent? What is, like, I'm still trying to unpack it, because it is like a more dense, and I love when there's themes in horror movies, and it's like I haven't quite figured it all out. There's some things that are
A
obviously
movie with
blatant.
a theme, Mike.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm hooked.
And I think
yeah.
And I think
So
the sequel
rare.
does make a lot more sense if you've seen the original, because it is a direct follow-up kind of.
They
But
bring
this
back
movie,
a couple characters.
but I love this movie. I think it rules.
Yeah.
It has a great atmosphere, a beautiful score by Philip Glass that really
Ye-
stands out.
You know what I saw
Um,
on Wikipedia, Jacob, about those other sequels, though? Some article that it linked to on Wikipedia had a quote where it called it, they turned Tony Todd into Black Freddy Krueger. I thought that was pretty
Yes.
clever.
Right.
Yeah, he's really kind of the black horror icon that a lot of people don't know about. And I do have I think the new version is okay. I don't hate it. I think it's interesting. It's got a lot of ideas going on, and we can talk about that a little bit. I
Maybe
think it
too
almost
many.
has too many ideas. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like doesn't quite come together, but they do kind of recontextualize Candyman as like this figure of black vengeance that's kind of righting society's injustices, which is interesting because that's definitely different than how he's portrayed in the original.
Yeah, and maybe at the end, after we discuss kind of the original, it's a good way to compare that. But you're right, it does recontextualize the mythos, and I like that this original movie is so much about how legends and myths come out of a community, and like this, the second one
Absolutely
just continues to evolve it. So this can exist in perfect harmony. It's like this, because myth is always changing and evolving based on the times, so it's perfectly fitting.
It's all about the power of storytelling, right? The power of narrative, because even in the movie, he's like, Candyman is saying to Helen Lyles, our main character, you're taking my power away by making people not believe in me. Like my flock is not believing anymore, so now I have to show my presence and like really reinforce that I'm here.
And Jacob, in a society where we're still burning and banning books, I mean, like what he represents in sort of this scourge of like, you cannot forget the horrors that happened to me. I need to perpetuate those horrors to get that bolstering. I mean, it is super clever and cool.
Yeah.
Like it is hard to emphasize how
it is really
this
cool
film is if you haven't watched it.
It is.
I would definitely say,
cool.
if you haven't seen it, definitely check this one out. I give it a hearty recommend, and I feel like not enough people know about it. And maybe with the new movie that, it kind of had a resurgence of in pop culture. But
I looked at that box office. I don't know if it had any kind of resurgence.
It was like a direct to streaming too. I mean, I think that movie.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
But this first one, like, we could break down kind of the plot, like what's the general mechanics of the story?
Absolutely.
We have,
so obviously,
Helen.
Yes, we have Helen Lyles, a graduate student who is doing this study about urban legends, played by Virginia Madsen. I don't know if you guys are too familiar with her, but she's an actress that I always like. I mean, I have like a huge crush on her in this movie. I think she's beautiful, but
Sister Michael Madsen, I've really never had patience for either of them. I'll be completely honest with you.
Michael Madsen works with Quentin Tarantino a lot, of course. Her brother She's in, she pops up in like Sideways, a movie that I like with Paul Giamatti and stuff.
Mhm.
She's always, fun when
Was
she's
she
in
in
movies.
Monk originally until she was like, I'm too
Monk.
good for Monk? Was she like
Possibly.
the
I don't know.
woman in Monk? Maybe I can't remember.
Could have been.
Yeah, could be. But who is Candyman? Well, Candyman is, like we said, an urban legend, sort of a Bloody Mary type, where if you say his name into the mirror 5 times, then he appears and comes and kills you, right? And this is a legend that's been passed down in the, world of this movie for generations. And as the story goes, he was originally the son of a slave who fell in love with a white woman, and of course that led to him basically being lynched and being killed in a very gruesome way, where they cut off his arm, cut off his hand, put a hook on it, and then they were next to this apiary, so they just basically bee stung him to death, right? So that's where the
covered
bees
him with
come
honey, and swarmed him to bees to death. It was.
And I have some fun facts about the shooting of this movie with live bees and all that. So
yeah, true. Like, this is 92. We don't have CG bees. This
No.
is Seinfeld.
All the bee stuff
bee
is
movie.
100% real bees. And in fact, Tony Todd had in his contract a bonus for every time he was stung by a bee during the shooting of this movie. He got a bonus of $1,000, and he was stung 23 times during the shooting of this movie.
Wow.
I'm surprised it's only 23.
I mean,
Right.
Mike, honestly, he lets, I think, about 100 bees out of his mouth at one point, would you say?
And that's real. They literally used a
insane.
special mouthpiece to put bees inside of his mouth, and he had to sit there while the bees came out. I mean, that's dedication to his role. I mean,
that alone, go watch this
like
movie
that.
right now, everybody who's listening, if you haven't. Like, he put bees in his mouth.
It's incredible.
You owe him. Yeah.
And nowadays they could use CG. And I did I did not rewatch the new one today, but I did watch it a year ago, so I'm familiar with what happens. And I can't remember how they do bees in that one, but I'm sure it's more, CG than practical.
Yeah. It's a lot of makeup-y stuff too, it seems like, right, Mike? Prosthetic-y.
Yeah, a lot of prosthetic stuff, which, we get that here too.
Yeah.
So we have Helen, and she wants to investigate this urban legend as Jacob has described, and it's kind of changed and evolved already from the 1890 origin.
And Mike, this is such an interesting and different protagonist than we've ever gotten a horror movie before, because it is not like your traditional like damsel in distress or the babysitter who's going to go get murdered. It is a graduate student who is working towards her doctorate, who goes to, I guess, like the University of Illinois or Chicago or something.
Yeah.
Who goes like, well, I'll go to a project and I'll study the urban myth of something that these people use to cover up the trauma of the horrors that America has inflicted on them, that we cannot figure out how to help every person. You're like,
right?
What is the plot of this movie?
Yeah, it's a very kind of intellectual like premise of like this
super cerebral.
Yeah.
There's also like the angle of like the intellectual elites, right? College, like high education. Like, she learns the story from some British like white dude who's like, I studied the Candyman, and it's like this disconnect from what's really happening,
And even more, Mike, I mean, there's so much of the white savior trope coming out of her being like, well,
100%.
because I write about this, obviously this is a big deal now. And it's like, get the fuck out of here, lady. Candyman's going to kill you. You don't know
you're
what
a
you're
22-year-old, like, naive college student.
She's essentially
angle. Yeah.
Smoking 1,000 cigarettes.
I'm surprised she didn't get
this
lung
is the
cancer
movie
on this
for
movie.
you.
Yes. She's smoking all the time.
A million people smoke in this film.
But she's essentially a well-meaning white lady that's like, I'm going to go to the projects and like conduct this little study, and like all the people that live there are like, what the fuck are you doing here? Like, get out of here. Yeah. So she definitely doesn't realize her own privilege, being and also being this like, upper class academic type, and
this is
all that.
underlined.
And then
like, her apartment, she explicitly says this is the same layout as those projects over there.
Yeah, right? So she's
like clearly the haves and have-nots. Yeah,
the luxury apartments that she lives in was once a project building that was gentrified and turned into luxury apartments because they had a good view of the city or whatever, right? They didn't have the interstate blocking it. So like, hey, we can get way more money if we kind of renovate this building and charge some rich white people some money.
And like, we nowadays, like, that's still a problem. Like, rent prices have never been higher. People
no, Mike.
this
is fake for this horror movie universe. This doesn't happen.
Yeah. people aren't really being exploited and whatever. But
well, that's the wild
it's
thing
a
too.
perfect
Is
time
that
to kind of watch this almost because it's not happening, and we need to remember
yeah,
that that's the whole theme, right?
and Cabrini Green, the location that they talk about a lot in this movie, is a real place in Chicago. So it's kind of wild that they just use the real name.
Right.
But yeah, so she's conducting this grad student study along with her friend Bernadette, played by Kazi Lemons, who, if you remember from our Science of the Lambs episode, she played kind of the friend in that too, and that was also 92. So this is around the same time.
I guess she does talk to one other woman one time in that movie.
Yeah.
And like at the end of the graduation, they're like, "You made it too. This is great."
Right.
You're like, oh, cool.
But her friend is interesting because she's kind of the she's a black woman who is also a grad student and working on this, and so it kind of shows the class difference that can be there as well. So that's interesting. Of course, Helen is married to this professor of narrative studies or whatever, played by Xander Berkeley, who's like probably cheating on her and stuff. So Helen kind of is suspicious of him, and there's a lot going on with that. But she's really, dedicated to like doing this study and like showing all the other academics like how smart she is and everything.
And can I ask a question real quick? Who are the two people that one of them, of course, Ted Raimi, beloved character actor and Michigan actor specifically. Who are they in the context of getting killed in that opening scene?
So that's just she's interviewing someone about the myth of Candyman, and that's sort of a retelling of what this girl is telling her. So that couple in the beginning, Ted Raimi and this other woman, are seen killed by Candyman, and it's just setting up the story of Candyman, I think.
Gotcha. And probably not a mistake that it's these two white characters, and it's like even the myth has gotten out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the ownership.
But then she's literally interviewing people, and then she hears from a janitor who's a black woman who starts telling her about Candyman, and her friend who knows personally this person that was killed potentially by Candyman in the projects in Cabrini Green. So she gets this idea of like, let's go to the location and like look around, take some pictures of graffiti and stuff, and like try to figure this out for ourselves. And her friend is like, that's like a really bad idea. I don't think we should do that. Like, we're dressed like cops, like we look like cops. We're going to go in there causing trouble, like, so it's fun though.
So they do the investigation again. She's well-meaning but naive, right? So they go down there, and everyone's like, "What the hell are you doing here?" But they find the original apartment, like the apartment where the murder happened, and it's abandoned now. And there's like the hole in the wall because she's like, it's built so the mirrors of the bathrooms don't have a divide. So she finds the hole that the guy allegedly climbed through when he murdered this woman.
And so that's where that comes in from the myth of saying it in the mirror, and then he appears and he came through the mirror, So
literally,
that's kind of shows how things get twisted and turned into this urban legend based on fact, right?
So she's in there taking pictures. Bernadette's like, "Hey, I'm a little nervous." And then they run into Anne Marie McCoy, Vanessa Williams, and then she kind of hesitantly is like, "Okay, I'll talk to you."
She's like distrustful of these people that are showing up asking questions, but then eventually lets them in and talks to them a little bit. She has a baby named Anthony, and she's like, not a lot of people are just trying to live here. Not everyone's like the drug dealers that like you ran into downstairs that are causing problems and stuff. And Helen is just like really interested by all this and is like obsessed with this idea of Candyman. So she keeps coming back, right? And she talks to this little kid who takes her to this bathroom and says like, "Oh, this guy was like, or this boy was killed inside of this bathroom by Candyman," right?
Yeah. And I like this too because the community is distrustful of Helen, right? And then so she has to like make the approach through like a kid, like so she's like relating to him, like I'm brave. Are you brave? Like let's go check it out. Like she has to start like with a kid to get kind of a lead on this investigation. I think that's pretty clever too. Because kids are telling these stories amongst themselves, on the playground and stuff. It was like, okay.
Right. So she investigates this old, like, broken down, gross bathroom. And while she's in there, she gets assaulted by some men that come in. Man with a hook hits her with it and says, "You're looking for Candyman, bitch. Well, here I am." And
yo.
assaults her.
Yeah.
And she of course goes to the police and identifies the man, so they catch him and everything, but she is injured by that, and then
Well,
what
she just
happens?
can't stop. But it's like even in that moment, like the Candyman myth has been, appropriated by this heavy, this neighborhood kind of
Yes.
tough guy, and he's like, I'll use this to make people fear me. So it's
Yeah.
just the layers that we're getting. It's just
And at
fucking
this
great.
And
point,
she found the tributes, right, to Candyman that the little boy was showing her to, right, and the razor blade being in one of them.
the razor blade and the
Yes.
candy bars and stuff, which is another old sort of wives'
Urban
tale that
legend.
you always hear about, of like, be careful, there's razor blades and people are putting razor blades and candy
Look
bars
out for
and
the
stuff.
Candyman.
There's nothing
Yeah.
but kidnappers and razor blade candies in the 90s.
Razor blades.
Yeah.
Razor blades. But yeah.
But at this point in the movie, we're kind of like, you're kind of thinking like, well, is Candyman real, or what? Like, this guy that
Mhm.
assaults her is kind of a red herring of like, oh, is that the Candyman that everyone's been talking about? He kind of assumed Candyman's identity.
He literally has a hook for a hand.
Yeah.
Could he have killed the other person in the apartment just for whatever
Yeah.
reason? Yeah, he's got away with it. Police didn't come.
But then
whatever.
as she's leaving, she goes back to Cabrini Green. She's in the parking garage leaving, and that's when he appears to her, right? And it's the man himself, Tony Todd, looking super cool with his coat.
Yes.
So
now,
cool looking.
Jacob, we were Flash fans.
That's right.
I don't want to speak for you, but in my opinion, when we were watching that, it really peaked at season 2. That is when the character Zoom was introduced, who of course is voiced by Tony Todd.
Yes.
And Tony Todd has gone on to have an incredible, prolific voice acting career. But when you are faced down by this man, I know you said, like, yes, he wears Klingon makeup, all that stuff. But just imagining what I picture is like a 7-foot guy. How tall is Tony Todd? I mean, he is monstrously big.
Yeah.
Dressed to the nines, like Mike said, a fucking
Insane
fur
presence.
coat on.
Yeah.
A fucking hook for a hand swiping at you, bees everywhere and stuff. Like, we talk about, like, are these films scary? There is a moment that later I do want to talk about that is scary, but this, like he is a good horror villain. I am impressed by Candyman. It's a great concept.
Cuts a hell of a silhouette. Yeah,
he does.
Menacing, yet almost seductive, where he's like, seducing Helen Lyle, right? Basically saying, like,
his
come
voice
with
is
me,
so
be my
sweet.
victim.
Yes. It's always.
I mean, he has an absolutely iconic voice, and I love Tony Todd. Anytime he shows up in anything, Final Destination, of course.
Oh, where he's just like the sort of like. We do. He's just like he's like the guy who, like, explains the rules, but he's also kind of like Death. Like, I believe he kind of like they work his voice into the kills almost sometimes too, in the mix of like, I'm a laser. And you'll be like, wow, Tony Todd.
I have a fun fact that I heard that they wanted to cast Eddie Murphy for this.
Yes, Eddie Murphy was the first choice to play Candyman, but they couldn't get him because he was too big at the time. So they're
expensive.
Like, get this guy Tony Todd.
Really cool. Tony Todd's
been
great.
Interesting. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and then the argument is, like, it would have had to be a Eddie Murphy movie, but this is not a it's not a Tony Todd movie. A 6'5", by the way, and he's got the perfect voice. Like, he crushes it in this role without shoes. So
yeah.
Oh, with the platforms he's wearing in these too.
Jeez. No, he has a very just an insane presence about him, and he can be menacing while also being alluring and having that charisma. And you can see
like
how
magnetic
people
when he's on
hooked
screen.
by him. Yeah.
Get hooked.
Get hooked. So he shows up. And he's like, I heard you've been looking for me, Helen. Here I am. And she kind of goes into this trance, blacks out. She wakes up. She's covered in blood. She's in Anne-Marie McCoy's apartment. The head of this dog that we saw earlier is, the decapitated head is lying there. And Anne-Marie is just like screaming, like, where's my baby? Where's my baby? It's just a horrific scene, right?
Yeah. And Helen has no idea what's going on. And there is so much blood. And Helen's just like, what happened? She's now implicated in, like, killing this dog.
It's a very
baby.
Yeah. Bad situation that she appears in, where she's holding this knife covered in blood.
She picks up the knife for some reason.
And the police bust in, right? And they just see her holding this knife, standing over this woman.
She's arrested. She's taken in. This is what I was referring to earlier when I said the scariest moment. I think what this franchise does remarkably well because of course there is a racial component to this, is make the police seem horrifying. The interaction that Helen has here, where she's getting hosed down or strips in front of this officer who's a woman. Like, it's not even a question of it being like from a chauvinistic point of view. It's truly just from a power and dominance fascistic point of view.
Yeah.
And not answering any questions, just repeating. Now take off
Yeah,
your
she's like,
just repeating.
she's crying. She's like, can I take a shower? She's just covered in blood. And they're like, just take your clothes off, blah, blah, blah.
Take it off.
Dehumanized.
Take it off.
Dehumanized, right. Like,
really. And she met this detective earlier who helped her with her assault, right? Yeah. And now this guy's like, you're fucking insane. You just killed this dog. You abducted this baby. That's what we think.
You're just obsessed with this neighborhood. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Right. You keep going
So she appears to be this white lady who's just gone off her mind and is obsessed with this Candyman.
Truly Karen before Karen's existed.
Wow.
Well, I'll come in there and help out with the Candyman stuff.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Get out of here. I wish her Karen was Karen instead of Helen.
That would be great.
That would be amazing.
They should call them Helens.
No,
but this is kind of her start of her descent into madness, where she doesn't know what's going on. Everyone thinks she's this insane killer now, and she's caught in a very compromising position that makes her look very guilty. And she can't explain what's going on because she just blacked out. She can't remember, and she can't explain like, oh, Candyman appeared to me and like did this.
And this is the thrust of the film. Like this, from here on, like it's basically, it still plays with like what is real and what's not, because nobody believes her. She really is believing in Candyman, but as an audience,
this all in her head?
Yeah,
right.
I don't know. And
I think Candyman, he's a fascinating figure. He's almost like he's a sympathetic character. Obviously, once you find out his backstory, obviously his origin, he's very sympathetic. He's almost like a Phantom of the Opera type, where he's like living in this project's building. He shows up to Helen and he's like,
oh my God, you're right.
There's like a Dracula element, like My Bride. He kind of reminds him of
he's almost like a vampire.
Of his love from back in the day, and he's unborn child. That's why he wants to get a baby.
Creature of the night.
I'll have my
family.
Yeah.
Like, oh wow.
Be with me.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what though? Dracula biting me, I kind of forgive, because it's better than like a hook hand stroking my face and being like, "You look so beautiful tonight." I'm like, yeah, let's like put that away. Though.
Yeah, he's just looking for a hookup,
Oh God.
Oh
Thank you.
But he's appearing to Helen, and he's basically saying like, "I took the baby. If you come with me and be my sort of eternal victim / love, then I will return the baby. But it's either you or the baby," essentially, is what he's telling Helen. And she's
Helen got a ticking clock, but nobody believes her. So as her circumstances get more extreme, she wants to save the baby, but she has to find ways to get out of custody. We eventually they put her in an asylum. They're just like, you are crazy,
right? Well, first she gets out on bail. Her husband takes her, and
that's right.
She doesn't even know, like, oh, do you even believe me? Like, do you think I did this? And he can't even like really give her a straight answer.
Jesus Christ.
She goes back to her apartment. She's like losing it kind of. She takes a bath, just trying to relax and forget everything that's happened. And then her friend Bernadette comes over. But of course, Candyman is showing up to her again, and her friend Bernadette, doesn't make it.
Yeah.
So
now it's another smoking gun, here. Here you are.
So
again.
Essentially, Candyman keeps showing up and killing people, and then leaving
around
Helen
her
to be framed for it. Essentially,
I do like his goal of like, I'm going to implicate you in murder. Like, what an interesting villain. Like, you're going to pass
if I was
out
like
and
a
wake up in
supernatural
murder
being, I guess I'd do that.
Instead of like just spooky ghost, I'm going to be spooky. It's like, I'm going to frame you for murder, and like everyone around you is going to die. How's that sound?
Well, we realize why this is. It actually ends up being extraordinarily clever.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the urban myth of Candyman is not that if you say his name 5 times, he'll show up and kill you, but he'll show up and frame you for murder, basically, and kill other people around you. Because she does say Candyman 5 times in the mirror, and there's a scene with her and her friend earlier where they're doing it, and she says it 5 times. Her friend stops after 4, and she's like, "Oh, you coward! Come on, say it."
That's right.
And that's that's how she summons him, basically. So
that's right. What
So,
was
yeah.
it when in Hellraiser when you solve the cube, it kills someone else? Is that what it was every
No,
time
you
you
solve the
solve it?
cube, you're asking to be a torture victim forever. You're inviting the Cinemax to
Right.
come torture you
But
sexually.
you
Pain
have to
is
solve it
pleasure.
like 4 times? I can't. The
Just
rules.
once. Just once.
Okay. All
And
right.
they'll show up for their blood orgy.
That's right.
Remember that movie
Best
where the
part.
guy had the thing like attached to him? He's like, it's like jacking me off all the time.
Yeah. I just like the
Yeah.
camera head guy.
And there
Yeah.
is some of that Clive Barker like obsession of like pain is pleasure a little bit in this because again the
Yeah.
seductiveness of Candyman while he's like stabbing you with
Yeah,
his
I
hook, it's
guess.
also kind of sexual.
Yeah.
Even this weird
yeah.
summoning, like you're bound to him once you
Yeah.
summon them. And I
Yeah.
did
Well, the
think
first
I
thing
wrote,
he does is
Mhm.
when he shows up to Helen, I mean, he's got a bunch of bees coming out of his mouth, right? But then he like kisses her with his bee mouth, and that's what
Yeah.
seduces her basically.
Yeah, but I wrote in my notes. I'm glad you brought that up. I put he kind of feels like Dracula and Hellraiser, with Freddy Krueger a little
Absolutely.
bit.
Yeah.
But way cooler. I think
Clive
he's
Barker,
way
Yeah.
has
cooler
anyone
than
else been
Pinhead.
more obviously into S&M like in the
Yeah.
history of the world?
No, he's definitely
I
very
think
interested
so.
in that.
Why do I keep writing about this? It's like, well, let me tell you, buddy.
No, Clive,
Yeah.
why do you? They say write what you know.
But I guess
it's
he's
all
like
I think about. Interesting.
he's my Stephen King, I guess, for some reason.
I do, Jacob. I have been pitched his stuff before, specifically a book he has, or maybe a short story called The Holiday House, which is a children's book about a kid who goes to a home where it's a different holiday every day, and then he realizes the house is stealing time from him, and he like needs to escape. I appreciate anyone who's in that Stephen King realm, a Neil Gaiman, a Clive Barker. So I love this exploration you've been doing, dude.
Absolutely. And when Bernard Rose met him in 92 or 91, he had just finished
like,
making
what a
Nightbreed. Yeah. But he just finished his own film, Nightbreed.
That needs to be on your list this year.
Yes.
That is wild.
That is definitely on my list. And
cool.
so Bernard Rose was like, "Hey, I love the film. I want to talk about this short story. Maybe we could make that into a movie." And yeah.
Sorry, Jacob, we mentioned in the Exorcist episode where we said like about William Blatty about like, Jesus Christ, can you imagine being a weird author and being like, I'm the one who's in charge of making my movie? And Mike brought up, of course, Michael Crichton, which was so true. But of course, Clive Barker directed a film of his own stuff as well. That's so wild.
It's wild because I think he's directed 2 or 3 films himself, but he never directed like his 2 most famous properties being Hellraiser and Candyman. He never really had directorial input over those properties.
Right. And we should have mentioned when we asked who is a director who wrote their own shit, we do have Maximum Overdrive, so Stephen King counts too.
That's true. That's true.
How could I forget the King
Green
makes
Goblin?
the worst movie ever made? Yeah, Cocaine the film.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Sometimes authors don't make great directors, right?
No, they don't.
No.
Stephen King famously, hated The Shining, made his own TV movie version that he thought was better.
Yeah. Have you seen that?
No.
It's bad. It's so bad.
Yeah. I guess he's come around on The Shining though, and he did love Dr. Sleep, and he was basically like,
course.
Dr. Sleep is the movie that I always wanted, like The Shining to be. So
yeah.
That's great. But yeah, Candyman. So of course Helen now is being framed for Bernadette's murder, her gruesome murder. We see her body; she's like drained of blood and stuff, cut up with the hook and everything.
Jesus.
Yeah.
There's like a bit of because it's described as methodology is like from the groin up through your chest.
The groin to the gullet, right? He's like,
it's like almost an Ed Gein thing. Like that's probably taken from also based on a true story. Those
again, it's very sexual.
Yeah, it's crazy. Weird.
Yes, it is.
So it's horrifying, and now you're blamed for it.
Right. So she is now being held, like you said, in this insane asylum because she's like this dangerous murderer that keeps murdering people, and people are like, we gotta, keep her locked up. She's trying to explain like, no, it's not me, it's Candyman and everything.
It's Candyman. I didn't do it. Candyman did.
Yeah.
Okay.
That definitely doesn't sound insane. No.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
But she's literally like strapped to this bed, right, being heavily sedated. And of course, we're getting towards the end of the movie. She's and apparently a month has passed, right? She's been sedated this whole time. She finally kind of wakes up, talks to her doctor, who's trying to explain, like, you're being charged with murder. Like, you've been arrested. Your husband, like, left you because you are probably going to jail. And
I work for your defense attorney. Like, we're trying to figure
yes,
out if you can stand trial. And this is
right.
another moment where it's like, I'm thinking, is there a Candyman, or is she just crazy? Like, because I'd never seen
Right.
this. So it's like they're still letting you have a little bit of like disbelief, in her state of mind. I
Yeah.
think that's smart.
And she's like, look, I'll prove to you that Candyman's real. I'll summon him right now.
I love this.
Yeah.
This
So
is great.
she does it. She says Candyman 5 times, and he fucking appears, kills the psychiatrist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Breaks her
With
straps
his hook,
open.
menacingly
Yes.
and gently cuts her little straps away. It's very good.
Yes.
God, guys.
But this escape, when he
Let me
makes his
undo your
exit,
straps.
She
Right.
escapes out the
No,
window.
but
She's like,
we need
I
to
gotta
talk
get the
about
fuck out
his
of here.
escape, because he just reverse
He
jumps
flies
out.
backwards out the
That's
window.
true.
It's the coolest thing. He's like Batman.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Mike. You're absolutely right. That is one of the wildest things I've ever seen.
But then it's also like, did
Absolutely.
she imagine that? And she just broke the window with a chair and jumped out. Like,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
so good. Yeah. So
Yeah,
she
and they
climbs out
do
the window.
show,
Gives you
like,
no peace of
earlier
mind.
when
Mhm.
she's strapped to the bed, he appears like above her, right, floating above her,
Mhm.
and she's screaming like, he's here, he's a murderer, he's here.
Now he's under
They
the
show her
bed.
that footage, and yeah, he's like, he's under the bed, he's under the bed. They show her that footage, and he's not there, so she's like, what the fuck is going on? Am I losing my mind? Like, she doesn't even know.
Yeah.
But he breaks her out. She escapes, heads back to, well, first she goes back to her apartment and sees that this student of her husband, who earlier she was suspicious of, this
Mhm.
young female student, has now moved into her apartment and is living with her husband. They're repainting. She shows up, and of course they're like, like an insane murderer just showed up, right?
Yeah. They are very scared.
Horrified.
And they're like, we're
Yes.
going to call the cops. And she's like, go ahead and do it. Like, she does seem
Yeah.
like a very crazy person.
Yeah, she's like, I live here, remember? And they're like,
Yeah.
you are out of your mind.
Yeah. But everybody's reactions here are like pretty realistic, because it's like, she's pissed off at the husband. She doesn't think she's a murderer. She feels justified to be there. And there again, like you said, you're a crazy murderer. Please don't.
And the
murder us.
husband is an interesting character, because he's like, kind of throughout the movie, you're like, okay, he's probably is cheating on her. Like, it's left
Yeah,
kind of
oh, yeah.
open-ended, but
Yeah.
like, he's definitely doesn't seem like a great guy. But then he does try to stand with her through some of this, but eventually is like, okay, this lady is like crazy. And it's been a month. She's been locked up for a month, and then she just shows up out of the blue. I mean, that would be very scary.
Oh,
if that
yeah.
happened.
And did we say, Jacob, this is Xander Berkeley, right? Is that his name? He was
Xander
from,
Berkeley, yes.
we've seen him in The Walking Dead before, where he played like a bad guy owner of
Mm.
some village. I can't remember. And then, of course, Mike, he's the guy in Con Air that Nicolas Cage like breaks his nose bone to go to prison in the opening scene.
Oh, sure. Yeah, he pops up a lot. He's in my favorite show, of course, 24, starring Kiefer Sutherland. He's the head of the CTO or whatever in season 1 and 2, and so he gets a pretty
that's right
good arc. So yeah, I like him showing up.
You think Jack Bauer would be able to save this baby?
Oh man,
what has been happening to the baby? He said you have to come today. It's been a month later.
It's just in.
Yeah.
Candyman's been feeding the
in
baby
his lair.
in Candy Green.
Just
She's been feeding it candy.
Like, hey, she didn't come again, so like you've either got honey on the hook, or I could give you this lollipop with a razor
honey,
in
yeah,
it. The baby's
just
like,
sustains it with honey. Yeah,
yeah.
It's a soft food.
I don't know.
But no, they cut to the baby a couple times. It's in one of the abandoned apartments, wherever his lair is. They show it kind of silly. But if it's been a month,
it's been a month.
That's
somehow it's surviving.
That's hard.
It is prone.
It does show him like giving it a little honey on its finger.
Okay,
right? Like, here you go.
So
it's living off of honey, I think. Yeah.
For a month.
I don't know.
Are you a ghost? But you're tending to this baby
he's
daily. Very good.
Yeah, he's some kind of supernatural being. We don't know the rules of Candyman, like how he's existing, what he is.
Spoilers for the sequel, but Mike, in that one, Yaya should have had diabetes, because he's like, I don't know. I had
funny.
juvenile diabetes for some reason.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk
Part
about
of the
that.
mystery. You were
That's so
only
funny.
fed honey for a month.
His
It's
mom
like,
keeps
well,
calling him
yeah, you're
honey.
sick, dude.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
But so she leaves her apartment, heads back to Cabrini Green. She's like, the only thing I can do now is like try to talk to
Well,
Candyman.
wait. She
Yeah.
doesn't leave her. Well, she does. She leaves.
Yeah.
That's right. But then something befalls the husband and the girlfriend, right?
Oh yeah, well that's like their last scene, if you remember. So
That-
Oh, you're right.
Yeah,
I jumped.
Yeah.
I jumped.
he
You're jumping ahead. That's okay.
summons-
Yeah.
That's all right.
So she goes back to Cabrini Green. Basically, like Candyman said, like if you come with me and be my immortal love, then I will, give the baby back. And so now she's just like, if I can just save the baby, I guess that's one thing I can fucking do.
She's like, have you just been feeding it honey?
Yeah.
He's like, marry me.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But this
Let
is
me
where we
see
get
that it's okay.
yeah, the cool reveal of basically we see Candyman, his origin story is that he was like an artist, a son of a slave who was like this great artist who would be
Mhm.
commissioned by these rich white families and stuff, and that's where he fell in love with the daughter of this rich white guy who hired him, and they
She got
so he's
pregnant.
in love with this white
and
woman.
it's
Yeah.
1890.
So she goes back to his lair, and that's when we find out like Helen Lyle looks exactly like the woman that he fell in love with, right?
That's
So it
right.
was like all destined from the beginning kind of thing.
Yeah, which is another interesting part about the Candyman lore, because she becomes obsessed independently, but was it always predetermined, right?
Right.
And again, is this just
Seems
the
like-
infinite cycle? It's fascinating.
Yeah.
And
It is
I love
kind of left
this-
open-ended. Like it doesn't spell everything out for you, which I like. Like it's not saying like here's the message of the film. It's just giving you all these different ideas and kind of letting you put it together. And it's just got a great atmosphere, and I just love it. But
I love
yeah.
this final little act when it's kind of her traveling deeper and deeper into the lair because for the ritual, so to speak. And it's really great set design. There's these murals painted of him.
Oh, I love it. And when
It's
she goes
really
to the
cool.
hole earlier in the film, and it's the guy's face, and she's coming out of the mouth and stuff,
Yes.
like
Mhm.
so
The
cool.
graffiti and stuff. Mike, you have to assume the murals obviously are made by Set Deck, but you have to assume most of these. Do you think these are just found abandoned locations in Michigan?
They did shoot on location at Cabrini Green
Wow.
for a couple
That's
days,
awesome.
and then a lot, mostly, and lots in LA, but they did do a few days on location. So I assume some of these are like real locations that they found.
I also do like when Helen first goes in there, like, let me take a picture of this neat graffiti. Like it's so
She's
God
so
damn it.
white.
Yeah, she's just this clueless white lady. Yeah, so it's really well done. And considering this is 1992, I mean, things have changed a little bit, in the past 30 years, but not as much maybe as we'd like. So it still holds up today in terms
Please
of
don't say that 1992 is 30 years ago. Please do not say that to
I'm
me.
sorry to
It's
tell
more than
you.
that, unfortunately. But we got to talk about the big finale, actually, because ultimately there's a big bonfire that's been planned forever, and
so this was set up earlier. They're holding this big bonfire at Cabrini Green, and it's kind of like an annual thing. I think they said they do, where it's like a big kind of celebration. And they're gonna burn away the sins of Candyman or whatever.
It's like a mini Burning Man for them.
Yeah,
but like less shitty. Anyway, so there's a big
hey,
bonfire.
you're coming to the Candyman burning, right?
You know I am.
The burning candy
every year.
Yeah.
Candyman be with you. I hope not.
But basically, she goes back and agrees to be his immortal love if if he lets the baby go. But then even he kind of lies to her and deceives her and is like, no, we're keeping the baby and we're all going to burn in this fire or whatever.
The family.
Yeah, because that's like what was taken from him, his love and his child, right? So he's taking it back. So he is this kind of vengeance figure in a way, especially with the way the sequel goes. So now we're in a fire pit. Uh-oh.
So they're all burning up in the fire, but she uses like her last bit of humanity to save this baby, right? And take it outside of the fire before she burns up.
Well, what's interesting too is we're still getting the is she crazy going on, because she picks up a hook and is like going to save the baby. So she's carrying a hook. She loves picking up weapons, and when she goes into the fire, the kid that talked to her just sees the hook going into the pile of wood before, and he's like, "Oh shit, Candyman's in there. Let's light this bitch up."
Goddamn.
Yeah,
it's Candyman.
And that's when everybody in the neighborhood starts throwing shit on.
Right.
And she gets burned alive. Now, we talked Dick Smith in Exorcist. We talked Tom Savini in Friday the 13th.
Mm-hmm.
I got to say, these are some incredible makeup effects. I'm not sure who the special effects artist on Candyman is, but they fucking rule on this fucking Helen finale Freddy Krueger outfit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know who it is. I was just trying to look it up. But yeah. I mean, yeah, this movie looks great. The effects are great. It's just awesome.
I mean, when
and we
he's
do
revealed
get like
to be a human beehive, like that's fucking awesome.
Yeah, so he does reveal. That's the big kind of reveal. He opens up his coat and you just see a rib cage with a bunch of bees, just all like he's just made of bees, basically. Yeah, it looks great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really great. I'll find the name by the end of the episode.
Okay.
First, but
yeah, she gets all burned up. Her whole body is like burnt. She looks, all burned up, but she saves the baby. And I think the people there kind of realize that she saved the baby, right? Because we cut to her funeral. She's dead. She's lying in her coffin. They're burying her. Her husband is there with a few other people, very smallly, attended funeral because everyone thinks she's a crazed murderer. But then all the residents of Cabrini Green do show up and kind of pay their respects, and the kid tosses the hook into the hole, and
I don't know, Jacob. I read that as the same way they revere yet fear Candyman. It is this continued cycle of she becomes the myth. We hinted at it before, but obviously Candyman's entire plot was to make her a figure people would be notarized about or aware of, right? So that she does become this thing to tap into the power of the trauma to go. Helen.
Yes.
And Beetlejuice style, she comes at you.
Helen,
Freddy Krueger.
A much less ominous name than Candyman, but
in my memory, I remembered it as something like burned lady, or like Ashes Helen, or something like that. But no, it really is just her name. I was very surprised by that this time.
And of course, if you watch
Helen.
Not Bloody Mary. She should have been named Mary, guys.
Yeah,
it should have been Bloody Helen. It truly should have been
Helen.
Bloody Helen.
I like
Burned Helen.
That would have been good.
But yeah, in the sequel, her memory, or the way people remember her, is that she was like this crazy lady who stole a baby and like killed people and then died, and that's kind of how she's remembered. In the popular mythos. Yeah. So, she dies. And then of course the last scene, her husband goes back home. He's kind of mourning her. He's in the bathroom, and he just says her name, Helen, as he's mourning into the mirror. Says it 5 times, ironically, and she shows up and kills him. So that's how the movie ends.
Yeah, and I like too that like he's living with this college girl and he's so fucking over it. He's like, I want to make dinner. He's like, whatever. Like,
he's
this
ready.
is a terrible idea. Yeah.
My wife.
Well, he got what he kind of wanted. Like in the beginning, like he was flirting with his student. You can tell like he's ready to leave his wife and
he's
date
coming
this
home
younger
drunk
woman.
or like I have to go back to the office. Like there's
he's acting real sus. Like
but he can't commit to just get out of it. But when he sees us out and she's in the hospital, like he cowardly is like, sweet, I can dip. Like So get what you deserve.
But just a really really fascinating movie. And I love it. It's just so much atmosphere. The music, like I said, Philip Glass did the score. If you don't know Philip Glass, he's a well-known contemporary, composer. And this score is great. I mean, the piano theme that comes up, like, so good.
Yeah, no, the music's really good in this. We talked about in The Exorcist, Tubular Bells kind of being like, hey, we should have cool music in our horror movies. Friday the 13th, maybe not great music, but the Kiki Mama.
Iconic.
Mama.
And then
Kiki Mama.
Exactly. But yeah, the music in this is really, really good too. So it can't be understated.
Yeah.
Great look.
It's almost
great style.
operatic at times with like the choral voices and stuff. Like it really gives it a presence. Yeah.
Phantom of the Opera, like that makes sense. And they could have very easily done like a shitty like hip hop score.
I was just thinking about that, like early rap.
Considering this was made in 1992, like they made a lot of choices that makes it hold up better than a lot of maybe
Yes.
90s horror movies do.
Mhm.
It's really stands the test of time,
It's
which
better
is
than
crazy.
Yeah, there's no
2/3 of,
real
like, Friday the 13th, or and it's like better than over half of
Oh,
any of the other
yeah.
franchises
Yeah.
movies. Yeah.
Better than like
Freddy
Leprechaun
doesn't.
and
Freddy says,
Mhm.
"Dark meat so sweet" when he kills a black woman. Freddy versus Jason.
Oh,
It
yeah.
is brutal.
And that was
Candyman
over
is
10
not
years
like
after this.
saying rap lyrics or anything. So
No,
thank
Candyman would never
God.
say something embarrassing like that. Like he's too cool.
No,
like,
no.
He's very
Um,
cool. But yeah,
yeah.
they
He's
did get
kind
the
of the
makeup artist.
prince of horror villains. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I have the department. It's not a name I'm familiar with, but I'm seeing special effects makeup from Bob and Dave Keane, and special effects senior artist Mark Coulier, key makeup Michelle Bueller. But
Yeah.
good
Again,
work.
the production design, incredible. Like the locations look great. And
Jane Ann
just
Stewart,
design
production
of
design. Sorry, I'm looking at it now.
yeah, no, that's good. But just the design of Candyman as a character, as this horror icon, so cool. And again, the bees, the real bees that they use to shoot these. I mean, that is
Jacob.
real dedication. That'd be covered in bees, including in your mouth. Like,
what's
yeah.
better, Tony Todd covered in bees or Nicolas Cage covered in bees?
Oh man,
I think
the
Tony
bees.
the bees, the Wicker Man. Yeah,
The
Nicolas
Wicker
Cage
Man.
hates this.
We're figuring out what we're covering next year. We got Shining on the docket. We got Wicker
Absolutely,
Man
yeah.
now.
Yep.
both Wicker Men.
That's
yeah.
right. Two Wicker, two Man. Yeah, can't
Two
wait.
Wicker, two Man.
Right. But like I said,
The
yeah, he did
bees.
have a bonus for every time he got stung. He got an extra $1,000. He was stung 23 times. He said in interviews, like, yeah, the hardest thing was the scene that he had to film where his first appearance, where the bees come out of his mouth, and he has to be very still and like act while this is happening. I mean, insane.
Yeah, man.
Insane.
You couldn't pay me enough. Like, I feel
No.
like in my mouth.
No.
Yeah, just have them crawling all over
That's
you.
not where bees are supposed to be, though. You understand that, right?
Yeah,
No.
Yeah.
But I guess bees are pretty safe to work with if you have like a bee expert there that can like control them and stuff. Like,
And they put
bees
like
are a fascinating
queen
species.
pheromones on him, so they
Yeah.
would not be kind of actively seen him as an antagonist.
Okay.
Force.
Yeah, I don't know how much you guys know about bees, but they're really fascinating because they're a hive, kind of a hive mind, right? They're controlled by their queen.
Yeah.
And so there are bee experts, apiarists and stuff that like
Apiaries,
work with
dog.
bees.
I watch those
Yeah.
Texas women save those bees all the time. I would love to have an apiary.
My
Sure.
grandmother was a beekeeper, or had
Really?
Oh,
like,
wow.
a small little bee
Wow.
apiary, I guess. So
And Mike,
Yeah.
is it true she would put razor blades in candy as well? That's fascinating.
yeah. She'd
Yeah.
say, we did Bloody Mary and bees.
But
Here's
bees
the
are very
thing.
important, and they are kind of like disappearing.
They
People don't know why,
are.
right? So
And they communicate directions by dancing.
right.
Hey,
Yeah.
this flower is over here, and they do a little thing.
That's
Here's something I figured out. I like themes. A hive cannot survive without its queen, and all Candyman is a hive with no queen. Poor
That's
man.
right.
That
Poor
is
man.
interesting, Mike. That is what he is looking for this entire film. That almost feels very intentional.
There we go.
But I do like that this movie, like, it sets all this up, but it's not spelling out at the end of like racism is bad or something.
No.
Like it's not hitting you over the head with its message.
Do you
Which I
understand
think,
the dialogue we had about society? It's like, no.
Yeah. Which is kind of how I feel like the sequel, again, it's not a terrible movie. Like, it has some interesting ideas, but it is kind of more didactic, where it's like, do you understand like what we're trying to say? Really,
that is a perfect segue right there,
Yes.
Jacob. Let's jump over to talk about that sequel and our final thoughts right after this here on Normies Like Us. That's right, because we're back here on Normies Like Us talking Candyman. We talked Candyman. Now we're going to talk about Candyman for a little bit and give our final thoughts on Candyman.
So spoilers for Candyman now that we finished talking about Candyman.
Absolutely. So again, this
just real quick. I know we just keep joking that. I hate when films have the same name.
Correct.
I don't like Halloween. I don't like Candyman.
No.
It's weird. It's almost like they're saying like people aren't going to remember this movie from 1992 called Candyman. We need to call this Candyman so people know that it's called Candyman. And
Well,
it's
this
just
is the one.
Yeah.
Weirdly, that kind of is fitting only with the theme of this series of we have to remember Candyman. But The subtitle was right there. Sweets too sweet. Candyman, sweets too sweet. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they should count the other two before this, and the title should have been Candyman, 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 Candyman.
And the fifth one, the world ends.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
Yeah,
That's
and
cool.
it does do the modern Halloween thing of being like, ignore those other two sequels. This is a
hate
direct
it.
sequel to the first one. And by the way, the other sequels in '95 there was Candyman: Farewell to the Flesh, and then in
Oh,
'99
that
there was
sounds
Candyman: Day of the Dead. So
Are they all
Farewell
Tony
to the
Todd?
Flesh.
yeah.
Like, oh, are they really?
And I'm
What's that?
watching them. If they're all Tony Todd, I
Definitely.
will watch them.
Tony Todd
Yeah.
is in both of them, I believe. Yeah, he does come back, and of
All
course
right,
he comes back in the new one.
Yep.
Farewell to the Flesh, Mike, sounds very Clive Barker.
That sounds like a Doom level.
Yes.
Yes.
You know?
I can't.
Which is
I was
also
trying to
Clive
look up if
Barker.
they were like if these are like straight to DVD or straight to video type
Oh, I'm
sequels, or if they
sure.
did get a you
Yeah.
know theatrical release.
Not a
I'm not
chance.
sure. Yeah,
Just
No,
see
no,
Tony
no.
Todd reading lines as this character. That's all I'm here
Yeah.
for. Yeah.
but this sequel, Candyman, does get sort of the
2021.
elevated horror of, I guess, Jordan Peele just being like, you know, what would be cool, like a sequel to Candyman. I don't know if he like watched it as a kid or something. Was like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, this is an underappreciated black
Right.
horror icon that has
But-
really kind of been forgotten. Yeah.
And
Let's say
Jacob,
that.
I think when he does these like 500 interviews that he probably does for Get Out, where people are like, so now, Jordan, tell me this. How did you invent this genre of social issues and black horror films? I think he's
Right.
probably like, motherfucker, have you not seen fucking Candyman? Like, I think when you are
Yeah.
asked that 100 times in a
Mhm.
row, he's probably like, well, I guess I'll just put my name on Candyman and like
Yeah.
get people to at least watch it again.
Well, people can
Mm-hmm.
kind of be embarrassing about Jordan Peele sometimes, especially some certain white critics. Like the guy that was like recently when Nope came out, there was a guy on
Mm.
Twitter that was like, can we just say Jordan Peele is like the greatest horror director ever now after 3 movies? And even Jordan Peele was like, yo, calm down. Like, don't forget about John Carpenter. Like,
I
don't forget about
remember
these
you
other
telling
people.
that
us
critic's
this on
like,
the
yeah,
podcast.
the
I
critic-
love
Yeah.
that.
That
Yeah,
critic is the
but they're
character
so
I
ready
would have
to
voted for
anoint
Obama a
him.
third time.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
yeah.
He doesn't
Mike.
realize.
Bradley
He's the
Whitford.
Bradley Whitford of critics.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey man, my man.
He
And
missed
you're
the
just like,
point.
"Hey, easy, bro.
Yeah. And even Jordan Peele's like, calm down. Like, I'm just
Yes.
really just getting started. Like, I made 3 movies in my career. Let's
Yes.
slow down on
Great
calling me the
movies.
greatest ever. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I don't think he's
writing
missed
credit
yet.
on this.
I mean, I do
Yep.
think that Jordan Peele is like one of the best working directors today, which is insane if you think about how he got to start. He got to start in sketch comedy. Like, he had a whole career in sketch comedy before being like, you know what, maybe I'm gonna start directing movies and just become really good at that.
I
I
used to
mean-
do a silly Jaden Smith voice. Should I make like Spielbergian blockbuster epics? You're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Um,
So the elevated horror sequel, like it plays with, it is the direct sequel to the original. It changes kind of the mythos though, because even the original story of Helen has been changed through time. You know. And
yes,
I
the
think
way
that's
she's
fascinating.
remembered through narrative, through people retelling the story of Helen Lyle, this crazy white woman kind of thing.
And yeah, so
Yes.
we follow Anthony, who's also an artist. You know.
That's
Yes.
right.
And like I
So
like
we
the
have-
idea that. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, so Anthony, the young baby Anthony McCoy, grows up to become Yahya Abdul Mateen, who I like him in a lot of stuff. Of course, Watchmen,
Same.
Aquaman. Can't wait for Aquaman 2. He's playing
Oh,
Black
yeah,
Manta. He's
dude.
returning.
Oh yeah.
Can't wait.
Oh yeah. Hell
Um,
yeah. Oh, he's back. Oh no.
And Teyonah Parris, who I think is a really good actress. And actually, I just saw this movie called They Cloned Tyrone, which I don't know if you guys have heard of that.
Heard positive
very-
things.
Yeah, very Jordan Peele-ish movie. It's a very Get Out-ish type movie. Very John Carpenter, like it's like They Live meets Get Out.
I was
Hey,
literally
okay.
about to say,
Well,
I
yeah.
really liked your Letterboxd review, Jacob, where you called it
Yes.
They Live Meets Get. I haven't watched it
Yes.
yet. Teyonah
With some
Parris
Sorry
is
to
someone
Bother
who's,
You in there, Boots Riley. Yeah.
I like that.
All movies I
Teyonah
like.
Parris
yeah.
is somebody who's kind of a chameleon to me. She always seems different in everything she's in. I really don't even recognize her in Candyman as like, oh, that's Spectrum or whatever her name is.
Monica Rambeau, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, she kind of disappears in a role.
Yeah.
Monica Rambeau.
She's got range. She can play a lot of different roles, and she plays
Yeah.
a prostitute in They Cloned Tyrone, in a very different role from like Monica Rambeau.
And she's
So
pretty funny, right? It's kind of like
yeah,
the standout role.
yeah, absolutely.
But back to the
Yeah.
Candyman sequel, you know,
Absolutely,
we're getting it's revealed late in the movie, again, spoilers, that our main character, who's been obsessed with Candyman, he's an artist, and he's been like, he lives in Chicago, so he's exploring the Candyman mythos, and as he's doing that, he goes to visit his mother, and it's like, he's the kid from
Vanessa
the first
Williams.
movie, and she moved
Yes.
him away from
That's why I was saying,
there.
like, even last year when you're talking about watching the sequel and
Mhm.
we were doing our Spooktacular, I was like, you got to watch the original because you're going to make so many connections to that, you know?
And you were so right, but there's a connection thematically with, was Helen just drawn to him? Like, she's obsessed with this and can't let it go, and
Yes.
neither can Anthony. So that's kind of like,
Yeah, he
where
follows
they're
a similar
equals.
journey of like his descent into like
Becoming
madness of
Candyman,
becoming
so to
Yeah,
speak.
and we talk about the obfuscation of Helen's story, like the Candyman story is recounted a few times differently in that sequel as well than sort of what we know as well. And the ultimate reveal that is not even just him as the spirit of vengeance. They list off, I apologize, I believe his name is Joseph Till and a bunch of other, or Emmett Till, I apologize, Emmett Till. A bunch of other scorned African Americans who were, of course, killed in violent crimes, who have sort of re-risen as these spirits of vengeance too, in these beautiful shadow puppet sequences. They're really the highlight of the film.
Well, yeah, Candyman's origin is sort of based on Emmett Till, who was a young black boy who, it's basically this white woman accused him of whistling at her or doing something. Obviously, this was in the Deep South at the time. Obviously, the racist white people did not like that, and they lynched him. And he was like a 12-year-old boy. And it's pretty horrific. Just of course, America was built, on the backs of enslaved people. Like it's a bloody history that this country has. So there's a lot of injustice that still hasn't been righted.
Right, and there's a line too that, like, I think in the second movie, America created the ghetto and then tried to like destroy it once they realized that they created it. Like tried to cover it up with gentrification. Like, okay, so.
And what I do like about this sequel, it was obviously made kind of at the height of the BLM. 2020, Black Lives Matter, the summer of 2020, it was a big thing. Obviously, this was during COVID. There was a lot going on in that time. But there was, a lot of protests and stuff like that. And this movie came out in 2021, so it's kind of living off that energy. And I think one of the most clever things about this movie is it has the, say their name, like say his name, say your name, which kind of became a rallying cry for these different black people that have been killed by police in crazy situations and stuff. So they use that of like, say his name, Candyman. And I thought that's such a clever way to kind of put that in current day, right?
Well, again, it ties all the way back to even the history of the first movie, of the origin of the character, 1890, and it's like it's still happening. Like there's still
he was a guy that was lynched.
Forget it. Right. So
and people are still being
lynched. Exists. Exactly.
Yeah.
So
this film also has maybe the greatest actor of his generation, in my opinion, Colin Domingo, who just has the sexiest voice of all time, and him saying things like, remember, when it comes to our culture, white people want every part of it. They'll take every part of it, but not us. They don't like us, and you're just like, God damn, these lines are fucking hitting. My only real issue with the film is it really doesn't seem to know who the lead character is. It almost seems like Yaya's not even in it that much, right, Mike? Like, but sometimes he is. And then like at the end, you're like, Tiana Paris is the lead? Interesting.
Yeah, by the end, you're like, the lead feels like it switched. Yeah.
Colin Domingo, Fear the Walking Dead. He was great in that. I don't know if you ever watched that, but hit or miss show, but he's great. But and like you're saying, that line. Sorry.
No, you say
that line is very prescient because it's true. Like popular culture takes a lot from things that were originated by African Americans. Hip hop. All that
rock
stuff.
Rock and roll came out of
rock and roll
stuff,
Yeah,
like, come on.
Basically everything that's considered
the
cool.
Scene in Elvis is the Colonel going like, "He's white. That means I can make more money off of him." You're like, Jesus Christ.
For decades, popular culture has been sanitized versions of stuff that was popularized by black people first and then sanitized through a white lens and made mainstream, right? And that's kind of what they're getting at here. And yeah, so there's a lot of good ideas in this. I do think it's kind of messy and doesn't quite come together as a whole.
But I
it
think
really
a lot of those ideas, however, are like still present in the original to kind of bring us around to the final thoughts. And it's just further explored in the sequel, but yeah, it's all there still, like those layers.
Mm-hmm.
I said the horror that the first one nails is the interactions with the cops. Mike, the end scene where he gets blasted and a cop fires on someone who does not have their hands up, and a black woman is then put into the back of a cop car, and you do not see the police officer. You hold on her horrified face, and you hear him say, "So we both remember how that went down, right? Where he was threatening and he had a hook for a hand, so I had to fire my gun into him, right?" You're just watching this as a viewer and you're like, oh no, this is so real. I hate this.
Well, it's either that or you're an accomplice, and it's like, Jesus Christ. And then again, it ties into the theme of narrative and not forgetting the history and shit that actually happened, right? Like
totally,
a story can cover up the truth just as much as it can contain it.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And that's when she kind of unleashes Candyman as this force of vengeance on these police officers, right?
Which is
yes, I am the name written on the walls. I am the justice that goes unspoken. That entire speech, which of course Tony Todd delivers as well in the first one, is truly just remarkable writing.
We finish our transformation, we see Tony Todd one more time. As the original
CG, like, I guess. I don't know.
I think they de-aged him a little bit, but it's like, everybody who has suffered is Candyman. It's like it's an amalgam of this thing, this being.
Yes.
Right.
And then I watched the whole credits for another Shadow Puppet show as they show every instance of these, horrifying victims of racial prejudice.
And excessive use of force, etc. But it's a good tie-in. But again, I think talking the classic. What a movie, man. I should have watched it before I watched the second one. I think it's so fun. It's going to be on like my yearly Halloween rotation. I want to recommend it to people because it's got so much style. It's incredible.
You know what?
Yeah.
I can go back and figure out now, Mike, why Joe put it on at a party. I think it's got enough cool imagery and like cool, interesting stuff going on that, like, if Candyman is on the background at your Halloween party, like, high recommendation here, Normies. I think that's a cool move to pull, and you to be like, oh, you haven't seen Candyman? Like, this is a classic, a stone cold classic.
Instead of throwing on like one of the many Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street sequels, it's like, let's put on Candyman. Like, that's just a really fun movie with some great imagery. You don't have to listen to it the whole time. You can just see it in the background, see some cool graffiti and stuff, and it rules. And I'm glad you guys like it, because I want to do this one for my episode of this year of Spooktober, and I was hoping that you guys would dig it, so that's awesome.
Boy do I ever dig
I'm glad.
Probably not gonna eat honey for a while, probably not gonna bite into some candy, probably, but
hey, it's still good. So check out Candyman, the original. Don't say in the mirror 5 times, but I can't.
No,
please
don't.
It enough. It's very, very cool.
Yeah.
I guess the one note is it feels on its face like the white savior movie, right? But then the way they work with that expectation, takes us into a direction that's actually very satisfying.
She's punished for believing that.
Right.
Yeah.
She.
And again, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if the ending totally makes sense, within the whole film of her coming back now as this burned up Helen lady who kills her husband, but it is a fun way to end the film on a.
I can see that as a studio stinger. Like, do you remember Friday the 13th when that guy popped out of the water for no reason? Like, we're gonna do that. Yeah.
And now I haven't seen the 2 90s sequels, but maybe I need to check those out and see if they're any good. But yeah, Tony Todd is so cool. Like, it's just a really cool, fun movie. Just again, dripping with atmosphere, and I love it. So thanks for watching. Yeah,
fun as hell. So.
All right, Normies. If you haven't seen it, see it, watch it.
Right.
Let us know. Write
it's
us
on Peacock,
at Normies_like_us, where you can watch it on Peacock.
On the cock.
This thing ends, Jacob. I mean, it brings up, and it's like, do you want to watch Halloween 3 season of the Witch next? Do you want to watch those other things?
The Grudge 3.
I was like, fuck. Peacock kind of rules. Like it's got all the good
Got
Halloween
pretty good
shit.
selection.
So
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm very
Check
excited.
it out. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's good at one
take
thing.
that out, Normies.
And I believe
Oh,
you can
yeah.
watch the sequel on Amazon Prime, if you want to. So
The home of bottom feeder garbage.
That's
right.
That makes sense.
yeah, but I had a blast watching it and looking forward to next week of Spooktober.
Spooktober. That's
Spooktober.
right. We've been going strong here. So
3 weeks
remember,
Yep.
Yeah. Like, review, subscribe at that address, like we said. Follow along all Spooktober because we got more spooky content coming for all October long, leading up to, as we pitched before, our big spooktacular episode, which is releasing on All Hallows Eve this year.
Wow.
Woo!
Samhain.
And
Hell
write
yeah.
in and tell us what you've been
Samhain.
watching. Tell us if there's some underrated horror movies that we need to check out. I would love to, get some new movies in here. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, if your name is Lyle, what is it?
Helen Lyle.
Helen Lyle, write in. If your name's Pazuzu, write in. Of course,
Yes.
if your name is Jason
Name's
Voorhees,
Candyman.
write
Yeah.
in.
Yes.
If you have a hook for a hand, bees coming
your
out of your
best.
mouth. Yeah.
Yeah. As this has been covering my blind spots, that would be great if you send recommendations. And as we've been marching 70s to the 80s, now in the 90s, next week we'll be in the 2000s as we have 4 decades, 4 eras of horror for you.
I love
guys.
this
So,
chronological order that we're doing. It's great.
That's right. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. But I guess
All right,
that's it.
Normies. This has been your host, Talking Candyman. This is Cabrini Colin.
And Marie McCoy.
And this
Where's my
is
baby?
the Cobby Man. Don't
He's
say
the
it 5
Candyman, yeah.
times. I'll show up and say,
Cobby Man.
"Hey, buddy."
Hey, how are you?
Hey, buddy. Want a sweet?
Hey,
Want a sweet?
you listen to the episode? Oh my
All
God,
right.
he's got a hook for a dick.
Oh no!
Oh,
This
no.
is Hellraiser. Bye.
Pain is pleasure, my friend.
Sweet's too sweet.
The new Flash, Candyman 5.
Feast of flesh, Jesus Christ. All right. Catch you later, armies.
Bye.
Bye.